The plate shattered against the wall, inches from Chief Kalu's head. And for the first time in 15 years of marriage, Ifeyinwa didn't apologize for her aim. "Say her name again," she whispered, her chest rising and falling like she'd been running. "Say Perpetua's name in my house one more time, Kalu." He stood frozen by the doorway, his agbada still smelling of another woman's perfume, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for water it would never find. This was not the Kalu who had knelt in the rain outside her father's compound 17 years ago, begging for one dance. This was a stranger wearing her husband's face. Before we go further, if you are new here, hit that subscribe button and tap the like icon because this story is one you do not want to miss the ending of. Now, let's go back to where it all began. 15 years earlier, Ifeyinwa had been a shy school teacher in Aba, clutching her handbag at a wedding reception when a tall, broad-shouldered young trader named Kalu Okereke had walked straight up to her table and asked her to dance before she could even say no. "I don't dance with strangers," she had said, laughing despite herself. "Then let me stop being a stranger," Kalu had replied, taking her hand anyway. That night, under the string light of the reception hall, he had pulled her close during a slow high-life song, his hand warm against the small of her back, and when the song ended, he had kissed her. Soft, unhurried, like he had all the time in the world to memorize her lips. Ifeyinwa had gone home floating, telling her sister that she had just met the man she was going to marry, and she had been right. 2 years of courtship followed, Kalu showing up outside her school gate with roasted corn and pear, writing her letters even though they lived in the same town, kissing her goodnight at her gate until her neighbors started teasing that she had a permanent visitor. Their wedding had been the talk of Aba, her in white lace, him in a sharp black suit, both of them laughing so hard during their vows that the pastor had to pause. But even on that joyful day, there had been one face in the crowd that did not smile. Kalu's mother, Deaconess Nkechi, had watched Ifeyinwa walk down the aisle with her arms folded tight across her chest, her lips pressed into a thin line of disapproval that nobody else seemed to notice. Nobody except Ifeyinwa. "Your mother doesn't like me," Ifeyinwa had whispered to Kalu at the reception, still smiling for the photographers. "My mother doesn't like anybody," Kalu had laughed, pulling her into another kiss. "Give her time, she'll come around." She never did. But for the first 3 years of marriage, it hadn't mattered because Kalu had eyes only for his wife. He came home early. He called her during his lunch break just to hear her voice. He kissed her a week in the mornings before he left for his transport business, murmuring, "I don't deserve you," against her forehead. Then the chieftaincy offer came. The council of elders in their hometown had been searching for a new title holder, a man of means to represent the Okereke lineage, and Kalu's growing wealth from his transport business made him the obvious choice. Ifeyinwa remembered the night he came home with the news, lifting her off her feet, spinning her around the parlor. "Chief Kalu Okereke," he had said, laughing into her neck. "How does that sound, my wife?" Like more work for both of us, she had teased, but she had been proud, so proud. The installation ceremony had been massive. Hundreds of guests, traditional dancers, the deep boom of talking drums, Kalu draped in red and gold, a chief's staff placed solemnly in his hand. Ifeyinwa had stood beside him in her own matching wrapper, glowing, unaware that she was watching her marriage begin to end. Because a title, she would learn, does something to certain men. It doesn't just give them power, it gives them permission. Within months, Kalu started coming home later. His phone, once left carelessly on the dining table, now stayed locked in his trouser pocket even while he slept. He stopped calling during lunch. When Ifeyinwa asked where he'd been, his answers grew shorter, sharper, edged with irritation she had never heard from him before. "Am I not allowed to have a life outside this house again?" he snapped one evening when she asked why he smelt of a stranger's perfume. I didn't say that, Kalu. I only asked. You are always asking, always suspecting. Is this what a chief comes home to? Interrogation? Ifeyinwa went quiet that night, lying awake beside a man who breathed differently now, who slept with his back to her, who no longer reached for her in the dark. She told herself it was the pressure of his new title. She told herself it was temporary. She told herself many things, because the alternative, that the man who once kissed her like she was the only woman on earth was becoming someone else entirely, was too painful to hold. She didn't know yet that 3 streets away, a woman named Perpetua was already wearing a wrapper cut from the exact same asoebi colors as her husband's. She didn't know that her uncle Godwin had already started hearing whispers at the market. She didn't know that the quiet, gentle wife everyone believed they knew was about to become the last person in Aba that Chief Kalu Okereke should have underestimated. If you are feeling this story already, drop a comment telling me where you are watching from tonight, because what happens next is going to shock you. The Chieftaincy Anniversary Gala was the kind of event Aba only saw once a year. Canopies stretched across the compound, a live band playing high-life classics, women in gilly towers competing for attention, and long tables groaning under jollof rice, peppered goat meat, and chilled bottles of malt. Ifeyinwa had spent the whole afternoon getting her hair done, humming to herself, genuinely looking forward to a night out with her husband. She missed the version of them that used to dance until their feet hurt. She was laughing with a group of women near the drinks table when she saw her. A young woman, maybe 25, sauntered past in a wrapper stitched from the exact same asoebi fabric reserved for Kalu's immediate chieftaincy family, the deep wine and gold pattern that only he, his mother, and his wife were supposed to wear. The woman moved through the crowd like she belonged there, greeting elders, collecting compliments, laughing loudly at something a councilman said. Ifeyinwa's cup slipped slightly in her hand. "Who is that?" she asked one of the women beside her. The woman hesitated, suddenly very interested in her drink. That's Perpetua." "Perpetua who?" Silence. "Perpetua who, Ngozi?" Ngozi finally looked at her, pity written all over her face. "Ifeyinwa, please don't do this here, not tonight." That was when Ifeyinwa understood, not through words, but through the way an entire corner of the party seemed to already know something she didn't. Her hands went cold. She walked, not ran, walked, because a chief's wife does not run, towards her husband, who was laughing with a group of men near the high table, his hand resting a little too comfortably on the small of Perpetua's back as she leaned in to whisper something in his ear. "Kalu." He turned, and for 1 second, one unguarded second, she saw the guilt flash across his face before he buried it under a practiced smile. "My wife! Come, meet some of the council members. Everybody is watching." "Who is she?" Ifeyinwa asked quietly, nodding towards Perpetua, who had the audacity to smile at her. "She's a family friend, distant relative from my mother's side. She's wearing our chieftaincy colors," Kalu said. "You are imagining things. Come and greet the elders. Everybody is watching." "I don't care who is watching." The words came out louder than she intended, and heads began to turn. "Look at me and tell me the truth. Who is Perpetua to you?" Kalu's jaw tightened. He grabbed her elbow and pulled her toward a quieter corner behind the canopy, his grip firmer than necessary. "You will not embarrass me tonight," he hissed. "Do you hear me? Not tonight, not in front of the council. I'm asking you a simple question, and I have answered it. Nothing is going on. You are seeing shadows because you have nothing better to do than sit at home and suspect me." She searched his face for the man who used to write her letters, who used to kiss her slowly at her gate until the neighbors complained. She couldn't find him. "You are lying to my face," she said softly. "You are lying, and you are not even ashamed." "Go home, Ifeyinwa," Kalu said, his voice cold in a way she'd never heard before. "Go home and rest. You are tired." He left her standing there and walked back toward the party, toward Perpetua, toward the laughter and the drums, as if his wife of 15 years was a minor inconvenience to be managed and dismissed. Word travels fast in Aba, and by the next afternoon, her uncle Godwin had heard everything. Godwin was not a man who believed in staying quiet, loud-voiced, broad-shouldered, the kind of uncle who once chased a debtor down the street with his slippers in hand. He showed up at Kalu's compound the following evening, chest puffed, ready for war. "Kalu," he bellowed as he entered the parlor, where Kalu sat sipping a drink like a man without a single care. "Uncle Godwin, with all due respect, this is a matter between me and my wife. Your wife is my family. When you disrespect her, you disrespect all of us." Kalu chuckled, a low, humiliating sound. A chief is not the same as an ordinary man. A chief has needs, has status to maintain, has people who admire him. You want me to fold myself small because Ifeyinwa cannot understand that? You are shameless. I am a titled man in my prime, Uncle Godwin. Perhaps you should go home and worry about your own house. Kalu picked his glass back up, dismissing him with a wave, as though Godwin were a fly buzzing near his ear rather than his wife's blood relative. Godwin left the compound shaking with fury, straight to Ifeyinwa's house, where he recounted every word, every gesture, every ounce of Kalu's disrespect. Ifeyinwa listened in silence, her hands folded tightly in her lap, her face unreadable. "You should fight for your dignity," Godwin said. "Confront him publicly. Expose him." "No," Ifeyinwa said quietly. "No? Ifeyinwa, this man is disgracing you in front of the whole town." "I said no, uncle." She looked up, and there was something in her eyes that even loud, fearless Godwin go quiet. "Not yet. Not like this. When I move, I will move once and it will be enough." She sought out Pastor Emmanuel 2 days later, hoping for wisdom, for guidance, for someone in her corner. Instead, the pastor folded his hands over his Bible and gave her a gentle, infuriating smile. "My daughter, marriage is patience. Perhaps if you are more submissive, more attentive to his needs as a busy, important man, things will improve. Men in his position sometimes stray, but a wise wife wins him back with love, not confrontation." Ifeyinwa left his office feeling more alone than she had in 15 years of marriage. Even the church, even God's own house, was asking her to shrink herself smaller so that her husband's sins could fit comfortably in the room. What she didn't know was that later that same week, Pastor Emmanuel would sit across from Kalu in that same office, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "Just be more discreet, my son, for the sake of the ministry, for the sake of the council. What people don't see, they cannot judge." Ifeyinwa went home that night, lay on her bed and stared at the ceiling for a long time. Then quietly, without tears, without drama, she picked up her phone and dialed her cousin Chiamaka, that sharp, methodical accountant who had once helped her father untangle a land dispute that had confused everyone else in the family. "Chiamaka," she said softly, "I need your help, but nobody can know. Not my uncle, not my mother-in-law, not a single soul in this town. Tell me what's happening." "I'm not going to shout," Ifeyinwa whispered into the phone, her voice steady, almost eerily calm. "I'm going to do something Kalu has never once expected from me." "Which is?" Ifeyinwa closed her eyes, and for the first time since the gala, something like a smile touched her lips. Not a happy smile, but a smile of a woman who had just found her footing again. "I'm going to disappear into silence for exactly as long as I need to, and when I come back out, Kalu will wish he had never mistaken my patience for weakness." If you think you know where this is going, wait until you see how she does it. Like this video now and drop a comment if you've ever had to smile through pain while planning your next move in silence, because Ifeyinwa's plan was only just beginning. For 3 months, Ifeyinwa became the picture of a patient, dutiful wife. She cooked Kalu's favorite ofe onugbu on Sundays. She smiled at church functions, greeted Deaconess Nkechi with respect, even when the older woman's eyes remained cold. She never mentioned Perpetua's name again.
Kalu, emboldened by her silence, grew careless, leaving his phone unlocked on the side table, mentioning property deals over the phone within earshot, believing his wife had finally learnt her place. He had no idea that every Tuesday afternoon while he was at his transport office, Chiamaka came quietly through the back door with a laptop bag and a notebook of numbers. He has 3 accounts you don't know about, Chiamaka told her in evening, spreading documents across the dining table. 1 in Enugu, 1 under his driver's name, and a plot of land in Port Harcourt registered to Perpetua Adaeze Umusu. Ifeyinwa's hand trembled slightly as she picked up the land document, Perpetua's full name printed boldly at the top. He bought her land? He bought her land, a car, and has been funneling money from the transport business into her account for over a year, Chiamaka said gently. Ifeyinwa, this isn't just infidelity anymore. This is financial betrayal. It affects your children's inheritance. Ifeyinwa set the document down carefully, her jaw tight, her eyes dry. Good, she said quietly. Now I have everything I need. Her Uncle Godwin's friend, a young man named Uche, who handled sound and visual equipment for events, had recently been contracted to manage the audio-visual setup for Kalu's Chieftaincy Council anniversary, a grand ceremony where Kalu would be honored before the full Council of Elders, complete with traditional dancers, a live band, and a giant projector screen for the customary tribute video. Are you sure about this? Uche asked Ifeyinwa the night before, staring at the USB drive she had handed her. I am no more sure of anything in my life, Ifeyinwa said. Play it exactly where I marked it, right after his tribute video ends, before he gives his speech. The night of the ceremony, the compound overflowed with people, council elders in their finest agbagas, women in matching ashoebi, drummers pounding out rhythms that shook the ground. Kalu sat at the high table beaming with pride, his chest puffed, his chieftaincy staff resting against his shoulder. Deaconess Nkechi sat beside him, glowing with maternal pride. Ifeyinwa sat quietly at his side, her face calm, her hands folded, giving away absolutely nothing. The tribute video played first, clips of Kalu's business achievements, his charitable donations, praise from council members. The crowd applauded warmly.
Then the screen flickered, and before Kalu could stand for his speech, new footage began to play. A grainy video of Kalu at a hotel entrance, his arm around Perpetua's waist, pulling her in for a kiss, captured clearly by a security camera. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Then financial documents flashed across the screen, the Port Harcourt land deed in Perpetua's name, bank statements showing transfers from the transport company account, dates lining up perfectly with months Kalu had claimed to be away on business. The compound fell into stunned silence, then erupted into chaos. Council elders rose from their seats, murmuring furiously among themselves. Deaconess Nkechi's hand flew to her mouth. Kalu leapt up, sweating, shouting for the projector to be cut off, but the damage was already done. 300 pairs of eyes had seen everything. "Turn that off! This is sabotage! Someone is trying to destroy me!" Kalu bellowed, spinning around wildly until his eyes landed on his wife, still sitting calmly, her hands still folded in her lap. "Nobody destroyed you, Kalu," Ifeyinwa said, standing slowly, her voice carrying clearly across the now silent compound. "You destroyed yourself. I only turned on the light." The head of the council, an elderly man with a booming voice, called for order and announced right there before the stunned crowd that Chief Kalu Okereke would be suspended from his title pending a full financial and moral investigation. Kalu's protest fell on deaf ears as security quietly escorted him away from the high table, his chieftaincy staff left abandoned on the seat behind him. In the weeks that followed, Kalu barely came home, staying instead in a small rented room across town, unable to face the community that once celebrated him. Perpetua vanished from Aba entirely, her family reportedly relocating her out of shame. Deaconess Nkechi,
who had spent 15 years looking at Ifeyinwa with cold disapproval, showed up at her door one afternoon, eyes swollen from crying. "I should have seen my son for who he was becoming," she admitted, her voice breaking. "You did not deserve this, Ifeyinwa. Whatever you need, I am here now." Pastor Emmanuel, too, eventually admitted his failure, visiting Ifeyinwa privately to apologize for prioritizing Kalu's reputation over her dignity, promising to counsel differently going forward. Many in Aba asked Ifeyinwa why she hadn't simply left the moment she discovered the affair. She had a simple answer for anyone who asked. "Kalu tried to write the ending of my story on his own timeline," she told her sister one evening, sitting on her veranda with a cup of tea. "I refused to let him like that. I needed to live on my terms, with my dignity intact and my children's future protected, not running out in anger, but walking out in strength." She returned fully to her teaching job, finding a joy in the classroom she hadn't felt in years. Her children, now teenagers, noticed the change in her, the way she laughed more easily, the way she no longer flinched when the phone rang, the quiet confidence in the way she carried herself through the market and through church. Some nights, she still thought about the young girl who had danced under string lights 15 years ago, kissed for the first time by a man who promised her the world. She didn't regret that girl. She simply understood now that dignity sometimes wears the disguise of silence, and that the loudest revenge is often the quietest patience, sharpened over months into something no one saw coming. So tell me, if you were in Ifeyinwa's shoes, would you have exposed him the way she did or handled it differently? Drop a comment below and let me know where in the world you are watching this from tonight. If this story moved you, hit that like button, subscribe for more, and share it with someone who needs to hear that quiet strength always wins in the end.